Wife. Look carefully. Otherwise, you can only look at other things in bed. My 4-year-old daughter brought a handsome guy home for me. I looked at that person and sneered. Then hugged my daughter and cautioned her. Baby. Don't pick up any rubbish and bring it home. The baby got anxious and waved her chubby little hand at me and said, It's not rubbish. It's daddy. I covered her little mouth. Are you blind? Is this guy also your daddy? The handsome guy was stunned at the door the moment he saw me. Then he called me in disbelief. Why, Annie? I ignored him. His expression changed from disbelief to ecstasy. He hurriedly stretched out his hand, but became cautious after seeing my sneering expression. He said, Why, Annie? It's really you. My hand was on the doorknob, and I had no intention of welcoming him in at all. I greeted him with a forced smile. Yes. Dr. Sue. Long time no see. The daughter couldn't understand the undercurrent between the strange adults. Mom. I'm hungry. I bent down and hugged her. What does Ran want to eat? Lincoln looked at me and ran. And a trace of bitterness appeared on the corner of his mouth. You already have a child. How have you been these years? Are you okay? Hearing him speak, I couldn't help almost laughing. Of course it's not bad. As you can see, I have completed major life events of getting married and having a child before I am a certain age. Speaking of which, I have to thank your ex-boyfriend. After all, failure is the mother of success. With you as a failure case, my next one will naturally be more successful. Lincoln's eyes were deep. Successful? So he let you take your child to the hospital alone? I didn't expect Lincoln to give me this move. I panicked for a while and finally closed the door angrily. None of your business. Lincoln stayed outside the door for a long time and seemed to want to say something. Finally, he sighed and said, For Ran's symptoms, it's best to take her for an ultrasound and examination. And next time you go to the hospital, be sure to be careful and keep a close eye on the child. I was even angrier inside the door. Damn it. Do you think you can teach me how to take care of a child? Always preaching. Just like before. Lincoln. Dr. Sue. The campus heartthrob. My ex-boyfriend and my once unrequited first love. I spent my entire youth following him. It wasn't until on the eve of graduating from college that I finally won the heart of the male god. On the night of the graduation trip, I thought I was about to embark on a smooth path of reaping love and academic success. Unexpectedly, as soon as I got up and went out the next day, I saw him hugging his rumored goddess. On the second day of being in love, I was lovelorn. There should be no more tragic love process than mine. I will never forget that at that time, he was in tears and the goddess was weeping. The two of them were really shedding tears together. It was really heartbreaking for those who heard it and tearful for those who saw it. It turns out that I am the female version of Ma Wei-kei, who separated Lian Shinbo and Zhu Yingtai. Damn it. Can't I just stop serving? So I went abroad in anger a year later. As for why it was a year later, because I was going to have a baby. When my mother heard the news that Ran almost got lost in the hospital, she almost had a cerebral thrombosis from anger. She pointed at the noses of me and my brother and scolded. She scolded me for being so careless to take a child to the hospital alone. She scolded my brother for only coming to the hospital when something happened. What was he doing before? I admitted my mistake to the old lady. It's all my fault. It has nothing to do with my brother. He is also so busy at work. My mother shouted, You. Shut up. My brother tried to smooth things over. This is all thanks to Lincoln. He sent Ran back. I rolled my eyes. Under the powerful pressure of the old lady, I took the specialty snacks made by her and went to the hospital to give them to Lincoln to express our family's deep gratitude. Lincoln looked at me bowing with snacks in my hands and remained calm. I put down the snacks. Take it if you want. Just when I was about to leave, Lincoln stopped me. The test results for Ran are out. It's life, Virginia. With a clang, my bag fell to the ground. Seeing this, Lincoln quickly stepped forward and supported me. Don't worry. This is benign. Just have an operation. I'll arrange it. I took a deep breath and then felt alive again. However, I was very puzzled about one thing. Lincoln. I remember that Ran's attending doctor seems to be Drive Zhang in pediatrics. I stared at the general surgery name tag on his chest and asked. Lincoln's ears turned red and naturally. Occasionally. We take shifts occasionally. Why hasn't Zhang come yet? Ran lying on the hospital bed asked softly. Lincoln lovingly touched her little head. Dr. Ave. Zhang still has other patients to take care of. How about Uncle Sue playing with you first? I had just fetched the meal and was standing at the door of the ward. What I saw was such a scene. For some reason, I felt like my eyes were moist. Ran's operation and hospitalization would take almost a certain number of days. Lincoln has come every day, since the first day Ran was admitted to the hospital. But obviously, he failed to win favor. With his serious and aloof look all day long, how could he please children? Compared to Lincoln, my daughter still likes the chubby and humorous Drive Zhang in pediatrics more. She even asked in front of us, can Drive Zhang be my daddy? Dr. Ave. Zhang looked at me, his eyes shining. Just when he was about to answer, Lincoln beside him pinched his arm. So that day, the children in pediatrics all heard an extremely miserable scream from Zhang. From then on, Zhang's status as the flower of pediatrics was no longer guaranteed. Just when I was about to enter the ward, Dr. Zhang also happened to walk in. Ran immediately became lively like a little fish seeing water. Zhang. After calling out, she turned her head and said to Lincoln, who was also very serious, in a proper manner, Sue. I want to play with Zhang for a while. Don't be sad. My mom will accompany you. No way. It's so funny. The child's lisp is so amusing. What's even funnier is Lincoln. He shook hands with Ran like comrades meeting. Okay. Ran. Remember to call Uncle Sue if you need anything. When I came downstairs with Lincoln, I was still laughing. Out of breath. Lincoln looked at me, with a smile on his face and a look of helplessness. Okay. His ending sound dropped slightly and dragged on a bit. With a bit of indulgence. Just like that night after I confessed to him. When he hugged me tightly in his arms. I looked into his eyes. There seemed to be a hint of emotion in those eyes. I know that we both remembered that night. For a moment, the atmosphere was awkward. I averted my eyes. Lincoln also clenched his fist and coughed lightly. In the evening after autumn has set in, the autumn wind is slightly cool. I couldn't help but sneeze. Lincoln immediately wanted to take off his white coat. Then, as if he remembered our current identities, he slowly put his hand down. I pretended not to see it and walked slowly, looking at the scenery of the small woods in the hospital. By the way, why Annie? When I saw the medical record for the first time, I wanted to ask, why is Ran's name Meng Haran? Because of noble integrity. And why is it the Ran for burning? I looked at him and said word by word in a sarcastic tone. Because only noble integrity is not enough. There must also be a raging fire to burn away all the evil spirits in the world. Lincoln swallowed. After a while, his voice rang out behind me. You let Ran take your surname. Is he not good to you all? Who? I was a bit confused. After a second, I realized he should be asking about my current husband. I quickly replied, good. How could it be bad? It's very good. Lincoln seemed a bit angry. So good that you and Dante have to take care of things. So good that he doesn't show up even when his own daughter is sick? My mind spun rapidly. He's on a business trip. He's busy at work. Very busy. Our family is used to it. Lincoln stopped walking. I turned around and saw him standing there dejectedly. Why Annie? If we had. At that time, I interrupted him. Lincoln. Since we have both moved on. Don't look back. He looked at me and nodded with difficulty after a long time. On the way back to the inpatient department, we didn't say a word. I tried to break the stagnant atmosphere and took the lead in making small talk. By the way, speaking of it, how are you and Lucy? Lucy? Lincoln was a bit puzzled. It seemed that he didn't understand why I would mention her for a moment. But he still answered quickly. She went abroad. So the white moonlight went abroad. No wonder. After getting off work at the TV station, I hurried to the hospital and saw my mom chatting happily with a group of girls at the nurse's station. Honestly, I seriously suspect that all 3 generations of our family have social butterfly syndrome. Ran's little mouth is definitely inherited from her grandma. The old lady said goodbye to the nurse girls. On the way, she started gossiping with me. She said she had found out everything. This Lincoln is handsome and skilled. He firmly holds the top spot among the young talents in general surgery. But there's this so-called white moonlight who is abroad. She thinks it's a bit dangerous. A bitterness spread in my heart. I interrupted the old lady. Okay. Now you even know the term white moonlight. That's really good. The old lady showed off to me. That's right. You little girl. Don't look down on us middle-aged and elderly people. I begged for mercy. How dare I look down on you? I just beg you not to set me up on blind dates all the time. Okay? The old lady firmly refused my request, and said that the organization absolutely cannot forgive my passive attitude towards lifelong events. She had it all arranged. If Lincoln doesn't work out, there are other outstanding young men. The top doctor in thoracic surgery, Dr. Lee. She has even given out my photo. I was frustrated. So on this Saturday afternoon, in a coffee shop on Shemen Street of the Second City Hospital, I started my first blind date in my life. My mom didn't lie to me. He's really a handsome guy. Light-colored casual suit. Gold-rimmed glasses. Gentle and handsome. It can be seen that he is deliberately dressed in a mature way. There is still a kind of youthful innocence on his fair face. Could it be that all my peach blossoms this year are blooming in the hospital? Unfortunately, I'm not here for a blind date. Dr. Lee, I don't know if head nurse Yang has made it clear to you. My family situation is rather special. I know. I don't mind at all. Dude. You don't mind, but I do. I don't want my daughter to have a stepfather yet. It's like this. Dr. Lee, I don't plan to get married in the next few years. At the same time, a pleasant male voice sounded behind me, making me break out in goosebumps all over. I didn't know. Are you getting married again? Lincoln didn't know when he appeared here. He took my hand and was about to take me out. Dr. Lee stood up and blocked in front of me. Who are you? Oh. It seems that there isn't much communication between general surgery and thoracic surgery. Lincoln completely ignored him. He pushed him aside and took me out of the door and brought me to the car. He seemed extremely angry but still restrained himself from slamming the car on my side. After putting me in the passenger seat, he sat in the driver's seat. After taking a deep breath for a minute, he began to ask me. I didn't know. Can people in our country commit bigamy? Well, what was it? Right. I got divorced. I praised myself for my quick thinking. Lincoln was stunned. He looked at me blankly and repeated in a murmur. Divorced? Yes. You see, nowadays everyone emphasizes efficiency. If it's not suitable, it's better to get divorced early and be free. He licked his lips and seemed a bit nervous. So, are you planning to get married again? Well, it's a bit complicated. What should I do? I can't find a reason. It's all my mom's fault for arranging this blind date. What do you think of me? This time it was my turn to be stunned. What did he say just now? Lincoln stretched out his hand and slowly but firmly held my hand. Only when we touched did I realize that his hand seemed to be still trembling slightly. Why, Annie? What do you think of me? Consider me. Okay? After messing up the story I was telling Ran for the 3rd time, I was driven back home from the hospital by my mom. The old lady grabbed my ear and scolded me. Snow White wants to elope with the hunter? Why, Annie? You're really something. With you like this. Your station leaders actually trust you to produce the ACE program? Go home and rest. I hesitantly hugged Ran Ran and said goodbye. Baby, Mom is going home first. Don't miss Mom too much. Ran Ran pushed my face away and hugged Drive. Zhang's thigh. Mom. Go quickly. I want to listen to Zhang Zhang tell me stories. Really. A daughter grows up and can't be controlled. So sad. Just as I was muttering to myself, Lincoln pushed the door and walked in. He said gently, "You go home and rest first. Ran Ran is with us." I avoided his gaze and didn't dare to look into his eyes. Lincoln saw my evasive look and showed a hurt expression. When I got home, I tossed and turned in bed. It was already past midnight, but I still didn't feel sleepy at all. I was struggling with an eternal and great philosophical question. Can a person step into the same river twice? In plain language. Well, can I jump into the fire pit again? When Lincoln asked me that question in the car that day, I thought I was going to firmly refuse. But at the moment, when I saw his trembling fingers, it was as if the tip of my heart had been licked by a kitten's tongue with soft barbs. A mixture of bitterness and sweetness became an indescribable jumble that clogged my chest as if it were about to burst. In those years in the past when I had a secret crush but couldn't have him, when I occupied a seat in the library just to catch a glimpse of him, I was constantly looking forward to such a look from Lincoln. In the end, the beautiful dream only came true for one night and then shattered like glass, revealing its cruel lessons. 9 years ago, there were 3 major scenes at Dayu University: the Lover's Lake, Stray Cats, and the Student Council President Lincoln. In my past life, I had never met a boy like Lincoln. My parents divorced when I was young. My mother took me and my older brother to live alone. My brother is such a simpleton that when his money is snatched, he just stands there stupidly. Filled with anger, I became the leader of the kids in our area and beat up the little hooligan who snatched my brother's money until he was black and blue. By the time I reached middle school, a group of followers gathered around me. I successfully became the big sister. Even the most vicious little hooligan in school had to give me some face and call me Sister Yan. So through my life, the boys around me were either fools like my childhood friend Ryan who were willing to be my followers, or iron simpletons like my brother who needed my protection. The first time I saw Lincoln was on the big orientation day. As the student council president, he led the student council to welcome new students. I had never seen a boy with such fair skin, such long eyelashes. His voice when he talked to me was like the unmelted crushed ice in a salty lemonade in summer. At that moment, I ushered in my long-lost girlish adolescence. With extremely acting skills, I played a lost new freshman girl in front of him. Senior, I can't remember where my dormitory is. Can you take me there? The student council president was already very busy with affairs. From time to time, other student council members would come to ask him for instructions. Under the scorching sun, he didn't show the slightest impatience. He carefully drew a route map for me. After I said I was a terrible person with no sense of direction, he directly took my luggage and escorted me to the dormitory. And along the way, he patiently and carefully told me the things new students should pay attention to. I secretly glanced at his good-looking profile and thought to myself, it turns out there really are boys who are so gentle and careful. Everyone thought the student council president was unsmiling. Handsome as he was, he gave off an air of keep away from strangers. But on the first day, I discovered that beneath his coldness was a dense tenderness. He didn't smile often and had an unsmiling expression for anyone. But when you looked into his eyes, you would know he was very serious. He had a cold temperament and gave off an air of keep away from strangers. But during the days when I secretly observed him, I saw that he would often get food by himself and go to feed the cats in various corners of the campus in the evening. A teenager and the cats in the sunset are indelible marks in my youth. At that time, I had just entered college and hadn't been beaten down by society yet. I still had the spoiled temper cultivated by my mother and my brother. coupled with a fairly good-looking face. I was a bit confident in chasing Lincoln. It was that kind of blind confidence of a little girl who was both self-abased, afraid, and a bit arrogant. This blind confidence was completely defeated in his circle. I also encountered the biggest nemesis in my life so far. Lucy. My childhood friend Ryan once evaluated me like this: a silly simpleton with a face and body of a seductive bitch. And my appearance didn't seem to be popular in a place like Daya University, especially in the medical school where there were many good students. Lucy, with a pure temperament and a first love face, was the real goddess. Her dressing style was also the standard model for campus goddesses. In contrast, at that time, I had dreadlocks, a crop top, punk earrings. It was only after wandering around the medical school for a few times that I realized that I seemed to be dancing on the minefield of good students. Determined to chase Lincoln, I reformed myself. I put on a milky coffee-colored sweater and a cloth skirt, and wore a fluffy beret. I occupied the seat next to where Lincoln often sat in the library early, looking forward to a chance encounter with the male god. Unexpectedly, Lincoln's first reaction when he saw me was to frown. My heart cooled by half. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the next moment, Lucy appeared and very naturally took his arm and softly called him, "Brother Yuan Lin." Lucy glanced at me casually, following Lincoln's gaze, and sneered disapprovingly, "Another one." Then she didn't even look at me directly and casually said to me, "Your male god already has someone he likes. Girl, I advise you to give up early." I don't remember how I left the library that day. In the next 3 years, I didn't dare to appear in front of Lincoln again. I just secretly took a glance at him from afar at the platform during the general meeting of the student council in the name of joining the student council. Lucy still appeared by his side from time to time, but most of the time, Lincoln was alone. I was a bit strange, but because of that embarrassment, I didn't dare to appear in front of him anymore. That cheap man Ryan patted my shoulder and seriously mocked me. "As expected. You didn't let down my hope for you." A little coward with a queen's face. I couldn't stand this cheap person's sarcasm. Coupled with graduation getting closer and closer, maybe we would be far apart after that. So, on an impulse, I signed up for the graduation trip organized by the internal members of the student council. Sometimes, the graduation trip would invite senior students who still had a good relationship with us to come and play. Lincoln, as the once very popular student council president, was forcibly dragged from the graduate school and joined the carnival of our graduates. I don't know which bastard chose the place. The travel destination was the Shushan Islands. We rented an entire homestay on an offshore island. The endless sea. The lighthouse at the highest point of the offshore island. The monsoon at the end of June. It was really fucking in line with my mood of saying goodbye to that person. On the last night on the offshore island, I got drunk and staggered to Lincoln with a bottle in my hand. I looked at him and giggled for a while. Then for some reason, tears began to fall disobediently. I shouted, "You bastard." Everyone was drunk and staggering. We were in the corner of the long table, and they didn't pay attention. Ryan ran over and pulled me, trying to drag me away. "Oh, my dear grandma. Sorry. Senior." I pushed him to the ground and pointed at Lincoln's nose and cursed, "You bastard. You ignore me. Woo woo woo." Lincoln seemed unable to stand it anymore. He came over and took my hand and wanted to send me back to my room. Ryan got up from the ground. "Don't trouble yourself. I can send this child back." I kicked Ryan to the ground again. With a resolute mood, I firmly grasped Lincoln's hand and announced, "Zhao Renzi, don't worry about me. I will have a final showdown with this bastard." Saying that, I dragged Lincoln down the stairs regardless. After that, it seemed like I blacked out. When I woke up the next day, I was stunned. My clothes were gone. I was curled up in a quilt that didn't belong to me. Of course, it wasn't my room either. I glanced at the items in this room, and saw the shirt Lincoln wore yesterday. I vaguely seemed to remember that I dragged Lincoln to the beach. Then I said something while crying and nodding. It seemed like I kept shouting things like, "Why do you ignore me? Why do you look at me like that?" In the end, I hugged him and kissed him. While kissing, I murmured, "I like you." In the end, it seemed like someone carried me back to the room. And then, so did I confess to the male god? And slept with him? I rubbed my hair. Shocked. Panicked. Unable to believe it. And there was also a hint of small joy. In this case, is there a possibility that Lincoln also likes me? I was lost in my own fantasy. The more I thought about it, the more possible it seemed. So happily, I put on my clothes and pushed open the door. The person I've been longing for. I looked everywhere and finally came to the balcony where we had a dinner party last night. So, I saw Lucy's eyes were full of tears and she was lying in Lincoln's arms. And Lincoln held her, gently touched her head. His eyes were red. And he was still saying something in her ear. At that moment, there was only the roaring tinnitus in my ears. I returned to my room at the fastest speed in my life. Packed my things and fled from this island that was still romantic and sweet a moment ago. Back at school, I quickly went through the school leaving procedures. Bought a plane ticket and returned home. I didn't even attend the graduation ceremony. Ryan sent me my certificate. Then I quickly changed my mobile phone number. Deleted the people we know in common. And deleted all social platforms, all the ways I can see him and he can see me. I'm scared. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen to anything. The only surprise was that more than a month later, I found that my relative, who was supposed to come, didn't come. At that time, my memory was surprisingly clear. I remembered that the homestay seemed to be a miscellaneous brand. The next day when I woke up, there were a bunch of unread messages on my phone. The latest and also the largest number of messages are from Lincoln. Are you awake? Are you hungry? Do you want to eat your favorite crucian carp soup? Strange. How does he know that I like crucian carp soup the most? I thought of the pleading and nervous look in his eyes when he was in the car looking at me that day. For a moment, I didn't know what to reply. So I simply acted like a coward first. Then, ding dong. A new message came in. It was actually my blind date. Dr. Lee. Unexpectedly. After that embarrassing farce that day, this talented young man actually took a fancy to me. He invited me to meet for the second time on WeChat. I was both amused and annoyed. After thinking about it, I decided to go on this date and make things clear. It was still at that coffee shop on Chimen Street of the 2nd Municipal Hospital. Lizzie H. Ishu opened the drink list and Curtis Walls asked me what I wanted to drink. I waved my hand. It's okay. No need. Dr. Lee. I'll leave after I finish saying some words. Before I could say anything, he hurriedly said first, "Why, Annie? Are you worried that your situation will drag me down? Are you worried that my family won't approve of you? You don't have to worry at all. I don't mind." The smile on my face disappeared, and I said seriously in a raised voice, "Dr. Lee, I have never thought that having a child is something shameful or a burden. My daughter is my pride. Of course. I am also proud of myself." Lizzie H. Iju blushed and looked at a loss. "Why, Annie? I didn't mean that." My gaze glanced and I saw the Vacheron Constantin on his swinging wrist. Alas. Another inexperienced young master. I patted his arm to calm him down. "It doesn't matter. I know. You are very good. But we are just not suitable." Lizzie H. Iju could no longer maintain his deliberately dressed maturity. He took off his glasses and had a dejected face. His expression was like a little border collie next door who had been bullied. "Why, Annie? You may have just met me, but I have known you for a long time. I watch every episode of the program you produced. Do you know how happy I was when I knew that you were my blind date? You are as smart and interesting as I imagined. Moreover, and your appearance happens to be the type I like." He lowered his head with a hint of shyness on his face. At this point, I knew that his mood had finally relaxed. I deliberately teased him. "Why? Do you like the seductive and flirtatious type?" His face flushed even more. Oh no. It seemed to be a red flush of anger. I forbid you to talk about yourself like that. Okay. Haha, Thaya, teasing kids is really fun. Just when the atmosphere had relaxed, I felt a familiar chill on my back again. I turned around and saw someone in the neighboring seat holding a book to block his sight. I walked over, took the book out of this guest's hand, and looked at him with a smile. I didn't know when Lincoln developed the habit of peeping at people's privacy. Why, Annie? I'm sorry. I admit that I was petty. Why, Annie? You can scold me, but you can't ignore me. I stopped in my tracks, turned around and looked up at Lincoln. Lincoln. I remembered that there seems to be no relationship between us. Please don't say things that will make people misunderstand our relationship. Okay? Lincoln took my hand and held it tightly. There is a relationship. I wanted to break free but couldn't. I tried to pry open his fingers. Lincoln. Let go. Where is there a relationship between us? What relationship is there? I am Ran's father. My breathing stopped. He knows? I said. I want to chase you again. From now on. Ran is also my daughter. Give me another chance. Okay. Why, Annie? I will give you a brand new home. My heartbeat returned to normal. I felt embarrassed and couldn't pull my hand back. I could only turn my head to avoid letting Lincoln see my unnatural expression. You said chase and I'll just let you? Did I agree? Lincoln put my hand to his lips and kissed it lightly. The featherlight and gentle tingling sensation spread from my fingertips to my heart. My heart started beating violently involuntarily. I wanted to pull my hand back, but Lincoln held it even tighter. I've made a big mistake once. This time, I won't let myself miss you again. Using the strength in his hand, he pulled me into his embrace and hugged me tightly, as if he wanted to blend me into his body. Through the clothes, I heard his rapid heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Hot and intense, I felt his breath pervading my ear. Why, Annie? I love you. So. You agreed? Ryan sat by Ran's hospital bed, looking surprised. I silently peeled an apple and said in a low voice with my head down, well, it's not exactly an agreement. It's just that I can't control what he wants to do. Ryan looked extremely pained. Is my family's cabbage going to be taken by a pig for the second time? I pretended to hit him. He pushed me. Okay. Okay. Don't make a fuss. But, have you really thought it through? I was silent for a long time before replying. I don't know. The apple was almost reduced to just a core by my peeling. I put down the fruit knife and cupped my face inside. Alas. I really don't know. Clearly knowing that he still has a moonlight in a foreign country. Clearly knowing that this time bomb may explode again in the future. But, Ryan pulled the corner of his mouth sadly, showing an expression that was neither a cry or a smile. Well, I knew it. Then this guy touched my head and started to pretend to be an elder brother. Anyway, no matter what decision our Wayne makes, Brother Ren will support it. If you still have no one to be with, you can come to me. This garbage recycling station. This promise still remains unchanged. I hit this guy on the head. You are the garbage. Your whole family is garbage. There will never be such a day. Don't worry. You idiot. While I was beating this guy, Lincoln brought Ran back to the ward. As soon as Ran saw Ian, she immediately ran over, hugged his waist, and looked up at him with a sweet smile. I miss you so much. Why did you come to see me only now? Daddy Key. Hearing Ran's last address, Lincoln almost raised his head in an instant. Ryan has always doted on Ran. When they play together, it's like a big lunatic leading a small lunatic. This time is no exception. Ryan rubbed Ran's little face. Daddy was on a business trip. My little baby. And I brought you a lot of gifts. Are you happy? Happy. Daddy Key is the best. Ran threw her arms around Ryan's neck and gave him a kiss on the face. Lincoln's face became more and more terrifying. I have never seen him with such a cold face. It's so terrifying. What should I do? In the next second, he strode over, his face blooming with a warm smile like spring breeze. He squatted down and looked at Ran Ran at eye level, asking her softly, "Does Ran Ran want a doll?" "Want. But Mom won't buy it for me. Uncle Sue will buy it for you. Ran Ran can have as many as you want." Ryan also squatted down with a smile. "Does Ran Ran want Gundam figures? Daddy Key has a lot there." "Wow. Gundam. Yes. My 4-year-old baby daughter's first love is hardcore adventure comics." Lincoln was slightly stunned for a moment and immediately came to his senses. Unwilling to be outdone, he said, "Uncle Sue will buy it for you. All those at Daddy Key's place are for you." Although it was a harmonious scene, I sensed a strange aura of a deadly battle. "You too. Don't spoil my daughter." A week later, Ran Ran was discharged from the hospital. When I went to handle the discharge procedures and passed the nurse's station, I surprisingly found that Lincoln was actually chatting about gossip with the little nurses, holding a thermos and invoices. I stood at the corner and eavesdropped. I overheard the following conversation. "Lincoln, you are actually going to participate in the hospital's outing activity this time? Oh my God. Did I hear it right? Lincoln, actually going to play with us?" Lincoln's voice towards others was still as serious and aloof as always. "Well, didn't they say that family members can be brought along this time?" The little nurses were stunned. After a long time, a nurse who usually had a fairly good relationship with Lincoln tentatively asked in a trembling voice, "Lincoln, bringing family members?" Lincoln signed the last hospitalization form in his hand and neatly put down the pen. "Yes. Going together." I was also stunned and stood at the corner. For some reason, my face felt a little hot. I fanned the non-existent heat with my hand and silently grumbled in my heart, "You dog man. Who is your family member?" Back in the ward, I was indeed blocked at the door by Lincoln. I was not polite at all. "Get out of the way." He took the things in my hand and then quickly and gently packed my face. I pinched Lincoln's arm angrily. At this point, his expression didn't change. He just frowned and endured the pain, still struggling to speak. "Why, Annie?" Pinch later. "There's something I want to tell you." Sure enough, this dog man turned the matter of going on an outing with family members into the nurses at the nurses' station like Ran Ran and want to take her to play together. As Ran Ran's guardian. "Why, Annie? You definitely can't not go. Right?" He was still seriously analyzing the situation to me. How come I didn't see the scheming side of Drive? Sue, who was clean and cool 9 years ago. I looked at him with a half smile. He pretended to be innocent with his usual serious eyes. "What's wrong? Is there something wrong? You dog man. You are really ruthless. I know that a hospital like the Second Municipal Hospital, which serves the people, probably doesn't have much travel funds, but I really didn't expect it to be this poor." The entire surgery department chartered a bus. People were packed close to each other. The autumn heat was sweltering. The air conditioning couldn't be turned off, so the windows couldn't be open much. After vomiting twice after getting off the bus, I leaned weakly on the seat. Ran Ran was extremely lively and cheerful without any discomfort at all. She sat on Lincoln's lap, staring curiously at the strange uncles and aunts, and occasionally gave them a cute smile. The energy of children is really mysteriously terrifying. Lincoln was protecting Ran Ran while touching my forehead and looking at me with concern. "Are you okay? Should we get off the bus?" I waved my hand. Since we were already on the highway, it's better not to cause trouble for others. I closed my eyes and said softly to Lincoln, "I'll just sleep for a while." Lincoln silently drew the curtain for me and deliberately adjusted the arc of my hat to avoid the light inside the car. In this environment, it was actually not possible to sleep soundly. I emptied my mind. In a daze, it seemed that I heard Lincoln whispering something to Ran Ran, but it didn't seem very clear. "Ran Ran, call me Daddy. Okay? But Mom won't agree." "Sujo. It's okay. Mom will agree." From now on, Uncle Sue will be Ranran's daddy. Just call me once. Okay. Then. Okay. Daddy. Ranran's crisp little milk voice rang out. Hey. Ranran is so good. Lincoln's voice had a trace of trembling excitement. When I heard this in a trance, I murmured in my heart. You dog man. Actually tricking my daughter into calling him daddy. But I no longer had the strength to open my eyes and fell into a deep sleep. After getting off the bus, I realized that the travel destination this time was actually the Shushan Islands where we had our graduation trip. Looking at the familiar blue sea, I was filled with emotion. It has been 5 years since graduation. I, who had fled this island in a hurry back then, never thought that one day I would return here. Also, I turned my head and saw the big one and the small one strolling on the coastline. Also, bringing the one I love. Perhaps it's time to confess everything? Lucy has now settled down abroad for a long time. We haven't been in contact for many years. So, can I take a gamble and win a long-lasting, happy and perfect life of my own? I took out my phone and flipped to a long-ago album in it. It was a photo of me and Lincoln accidentally taken by a classmate taking pictures during a student union activity on the bench under the tree. The two of us were sitting with our backs to the camera. Lincoln was quietly reading a book. He was reading, and I was looking at him sideways. The hands seemed to be casually placed on both sides of the body, but the direction of the feet involuntarily tilts towards him. That is a youthful, unstoppable joy that anyone can see. 9 years have passed. I looked at that photo, with my eyes slightly moist at the corners. In the distance, Ranran is calling me and asking me to come over. Lincoln is also looking at me with a smile and waving at me. A smile appears on the corner of my mouth. I am about to turn off my phone. Ding dong, the WeChat notification sound rings. New friend verification message. I swipe it open and see the name that I was just silently reciting a moment ago. Lucy. The verification message she sent reads, I'm back in the country. Shall we talk? I look at the woman in front of me expressionlessly. After 5 years of not seeing each other, she has become much more mature. What remains unchanged is still that air of goddess-like elegance and arrogance. Lucy takes a sip of coffee and slowly puts down the cup. As soon as she opens her mouth, it has nothing to do with the reserved temperament of a goddess. I heard that Brother Yuan Lin is chasing you now? TSK. At this moment, in my mind, I'm already imagining whether I should slap her later, or directly splash coffee on her, etc. But at this moment, I still remain calm and even smile slightly. This seems to have nothing to do with Miss Leon. Lucy is not embarrassed by my words at all. Instead, she casually takes another sip of coffee. It's nothing. Just caring about Brother Yuan Lin's lifelong event. I thought he had no chance in this lifetime. Unexpectedly. It's really a fateful coincidence. I can actually achieve a positive result. For a moment, I don't quite catch the meaning of her words. Is there something important that I don't know? I ask in confusion. You and Lincoln, haven't you been together? Lucy almost spits out her coffee. She is also stunned and asks me in return, you still don't know? What should I know? Lucy supports her forehead. Her delicate manicured nails tap on her temple, in a tone that is completely inconsistent with her appearance. She murmurs, it's over. But it's amazing that they can continue their previous relationship like this. These two people are really tough. Hearing this, my brain is almost crashing. But I still grasp the crucial point and ask her, so you and Lincoln have been just friends from the beginning to the end? Should be considered siblings. But almost no one knows about this. Because my mother was the ex-fiancée of our scumbag father. At this point, Lucy puts down the cup, smiles bitterly, and tells me the story of her family. It turns out that Lucy's mother and Lincoln's father were childhood sweethearts and a couple who had been together since their school days. After graduating from technical secondary school, Lincoln's father was assigned to Lincoln's grandfather's unit, while Lucy's mother was assigned to a neighboring city. Lincoln's father is handsome and a talented young man, He was immediately favored by Lincoln's grandfather as a son-in-law. But from the beginning to the end, he didn't say that he already had a fiancée. He just got married and had children with Lincoln's mother like this. When Lincoln's mother was pregnant, Lucy's mother was also pregnant. The scumbag always used the excuse of being busy with work and saying that since they were already engaged, he would wait until after a certain period and earn money for their family before getting married. So, when Lucy's mother gave birth to Lucy, it was also the time when she realized that her lover of more than 10 years had already abandoned her and her daughter. Lucy's mother, regardless of being in confinement, held Lucy and rushed to the neighboring city. She wanted to ask the scumbag clearly, but the scumbag deceived her again. After finding that sweet words could no longer deceive his former fiancée, he immediately turned hostile and drove them out. Lucy, who was not yet out of confinement, held the seriously ill Lucy and could only huddle on the bed of a small, unlicensed hospital. In the end, all this still couldn't be hidden from Lincoln's mother. After learning everything, without the slightest hesitation, she divorced Sue's father. And in the end, it was also she who sent life-saving money and supplements to Lucy's mother, who had no money to take care of her child. Lucy survived, but her mother lost her own life from then on. Her entire story has spread in her original unit. In that era, no one cared whether you were a victim. Gossip is always formidable. Later, even rumors spread that Lucy's mother deliberately became a mistress. Lucy's mother lost her love and her job. She was greatly hit and her mental state began to have problems. Later, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Lucy was also half-fostered in the Sue family. Family is the deepest wound in Lucy's heart. She never mentions anything about her family at school. To protect her, Lincoln also never mentions it. The day after the graduation trip to Shushan was also the day when Lucy's mother died in a mental hospital. Lucy received the news of her mother's death. In grief and panic, she found Lincoln early in the morning and told him this news. So what I saw on the balcony that morning was exactly the scene. Later, when Brother Yuan Lin couldn't find you and thought that maybe you saw us together. With my consent, he wanted to tell you all this. Didn't you receive his message? I thought of all the contact methods that I had deleted. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry about Auntie's matter. Lucy waved her hand. Her voice slightly choked. It's all in the past. I think for her, it may also be a relief. I sigh. So, the person that Yuan Lin has liked all through college is you. Lucy suddenly seems to realize and says. I look up abruptly, unable to believe it. Lincoln has always liked me? Lucy said that she has always known that there is someone in Lincoln's heart. But neither she nor Lincoln's friends know who this girl is. Lincoln is also unwilling to say. So she had to play the role of a malicious white moonlight, first and help Lincoln fend off many senior and junior schoolgirls. At that time, she was also very puzzled. Why? Liking someone, but never seeing Lincoln take the initiative. It wasn't until after that graduation trip that when she saw how anxiously Lincoln was looking for me later, she realized that the person Lincoln had liked all along was me. I got out of the car breathlessly and ran wildly on my way home. I want to shout and scream, but nothing is as urgent as my desire to see Lincoln right now. I want to tell him, Lincoln, I have also liked you for many years. It was you from the very beginning. Always you. Only you. Also, I want to confess everything to him formally. But when I got home, I saw Lincoln sitting expressionlessly on the sofa. This time is not yet the time for Ran Ran to sleep. Usually, Lincoln will accompany Ran Ran, chatting and playing. But at this moment, there is no noise from Ran Ran. No laughter and joy between the two. Silence. Ran Ran is asleep. He looks up and sees me. A bitter smile appears at the corner of his mouth. Then his gaze falls on something in his hand. I follow his gaze and see a photo the size of a card. The back view of me and him sitting on a bench under a tree. This photo was only washed out by me back, and kept in the interlaver of my wallet. Lincoln's voice when he speaks is somewhat tired and hoarse. Ran said that this is Daddy. She heard what Mommy said while looking at this photo. She said that when she misses Daddy very much, she will kiss this photo. But she can't tell Mommy because Mommy will be unhappy. Hey. Lincoln swallowed the remaining words with difficulty, then closed his eyes and covered his eyes feebly with his hand. Why, Annie? Don't you owe me an explanation? Can I know what extremely important thing I have missed? Lincoln and I haven't talked for a week. He still takes care of Ran, picks her up from kindergarten and brings her back in the evening. And he will cook for me when I work overtime and come home late. But he leaves before I get home. I tried to block him, but he could always avoid me. That day, facing Lincoln who had already seen the photo, I desperately explained and fessed everything incoherently. I can straighten out all the logic in sequence. But there is one fact that I cannot deny alone after I found out that I was unexpectedly pregnant. I didn't tell Lincoln. At that time, I had just experienced confessing leads to Lovelorn. I wanted to completely let go of this person. My first reaction when I found out that I was unexpectedly pregnant was also that aborting her was my most rational choice. However, in this world, there is a kind of feeling called being unable to let go and being reluctant. I can't bear it. I can't bear the moment when I felt the baby move in my belly for the first time. I can't bear the tiny sprout of life conceived in my body that I saw during the ultrasound. So at that moment, my decision to keep her had nothing to do with Lincoln or anyone else. I really want to raise her well by myself. Even now, I still think I was not wrong back then. And Lincoln was even more not wrong. He passively endured all this. There is only one kind of mistake, called a strange combination of circumstances. It has hurt everyone. But who says that a strange combination of circumstances can't be changed? There has never been compromise in Wyannie's life. For a man, I can chase again. For the injuries we have suffered, we can make up for them again. If I miss Lincoln again this time, I will really be a fool. I finally blocked Lincoln in the underground garage of the hospital. I don't know if he is avoiding me or numbing himself. He has added surgeries to himself until early in the morning for 3 consecutive weekends. Their department director even found me and asked me to keep an eye on him and persuade him. I am also acting on the director's orders. Lincoln avoided my gaze directly fixed on him and said softly, "Why, Annie? It's too late. Go home quickly." Regardless of everything, I pulled open the passenger door and sat down on it. I don't care. Either you throw me down. Lincoln sighed. His gaze didn't turn to look at me. After a pause, he said, "Okay. Then I'll take you home." I yanked his hand holding the steering wheel and tightly grasped his hand, not letting him pull it back. "Lincoln, let's make things clear today. Do you want to break up with me? You know. As long as you say you don't want to, I will definitely not disturb you again." Hearing this, his body trembled. His hand subconsciously grasped my hand even tighter and pulled me towards him. But then, as if suddenly realizing something, he let go of my hand. Of course, I wouldn't let him let go. He sighed and finally turned to face me. His gaze was firmly fixed on me. Just sitting opposite him, I could already feel the intense tenderness and reluctance in that gaze. He reached out to my ear and gently brushed aside my scattered strands of hair. "Why, Annie? In the past 2 days, when I thought about it carefully, rather than being angry with you, it's better to say that I'm angry with myself back then." I showed a puzzled expression. I always think, if I had been a bit braver back then, if I had done more, if I hadn't given up because I couldn't contact you, would everything be different? And you wouldn't have to go through such a failed marriage. Wait a minute. What the heck? It seems that there are still some more complicated things that haven't been made clear. I grabbed his hand. "What marriage? I'm not married." Lincoln was stunned by me. He murmured, "But didn't you marry Ryan?" I was completely confused. I just told a lie about having a husband out of anger at that time. Why did it turn into me marrying Ryan? Where on earth did Lincoln hear such strange things? I held Lincoln's face in my hands and stared at him tightly, gritted my teeth and said, Now, tell me all the things that are weighing on your mind. I heard a strange story from Lincoln. I can't believe that this is actually the past when I couldn't get him as I remember. Lincoln said that in his eyes at that time. It seemed that I and Ryan were the same kind of people. We are avant-garde. Free and easy. Brave. And forge ahead without hesitation. In that midsummer when I was lost in the tenderness of a teenager. The teenager also saw me at a glance in the crowd. But he also quickly saw that there was still a Ryan beside me. I was completely different in front of Ryan and in front of him. I could let go of my burden and act shamelessly. It seemed that I was completely blooming passionately. Plus, he heard through inquiries that Ryan and I had been childhood sweethearts since primary school. So he immediately thought that Ryan and I were a couple. Even on the night of the graduation trip when I went to him drunk and confessed. He also thought that I had broken up with Ryan. He considered whether to push me away. But in the end, he couldn't bear it. Why, Annie? You don't know how inferior I was at that time. Lincoln covered his eyes and said to me in a low voice. In my life, I have never been unrestrained. For every decision, I will look ahead and consider carefully. I will take to heart what everyone around me says. Everyone sees me as having glorious titles. Student council president. Outstanding graduate. Everyone thinks I am a child of fortune. But only I know that in fact, my talent is not that high. I envied the world of you and Ryan. At that time, I felt that I could never enter it. It turns out that when I thought I was out of place outside an excellent circle back then, he was also looking at me from afar outside my world. And neither of us had the courage to take a step further. Fool. My tears disobediently welled up from my eyes. Big fool. I suddenly threw myself at Lincoln. His hat almost hit the car window. But he still protected me at the first moment to prevent me from falling out of the seat. I buried my tear-stained face in his shoulder socket, and sat in a muffled voice in his embrace. So you thought I got married to Ryan later? He held me while stroking my hair. Yes. At that time. I couldn't find you. After a long time. I heard that both you and Ryan had returned to your hometown. So I thought you. I got up from his embrace and wiped away my tears. Then why did you still come here? He wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes for me. This sounds a bit sour. You say it. If there's anything left unsaid, you have to tell me. He sighed. After graduating with a Ph.D., I asked my teacher to help me get in touch with the second hospital here. At that time, I was thinking that maybe one day, at some moment in the hospital, when I push open the door of the consulting room, it will be you. This is the first time I've come to Lincoln's place. It's clean and tidy, but lacking in human warmth. Just like his usually aloof appearance. Lincoln is busy in the kitchen. After I've said several times that I'm not hungry, this man still chases me out of the kitchen, and asks me to sit properly on the sofa and wait for a late-night snack. An hour later, Lincoln comes out of the kitchen. Crucian carp soup. Crab roast steamed buns. Almost all of my favorites. This time, the steamed buns are in convenient packaging for steaming. They may not be very fresh. When crabs are in season later, I'll make them for you by hand. I hug Lincoln, who is setting the table. From behind, he pats my hand and says gently, "Eat first. Be good. It won't taste good if it gets cold." I start to act willfully. No. Then I stick my face on his back and ask softly, "How do you know I love Crucian carp soup?" I didn't hear Lincoln's answer. I lean forward and find that his face is quietly blushing. When Auntie is chatting about you at the nurse's station, I'll also go over and listen. My heart instantly turns into a honey shortbread. I turn Lincoln around forcefully. Push us back against the dining table. Place one hand by his ear. And bring my face close to his face. Pretending to be fierce and saying, "I don't want to eat. I want to eat you." Lincoln looks at me. And suddenly bursts out laughing. I miss him terribly. Just now, I mustered up my courage and put on a show of a fierce tiger pouncing on its prey. Unexpectedly, This guy saw through me at a glance and still laughed at me. I feel a bit embarrassed. My face is burning. What are you laughing at? Laughing at nothing. After laughing for a while, Lincoln stops. His expression becomes serious. And his eyes gradually darken. His hand slowly strokes my waist. Since I was young, this place has been untouchable. At this moment, under his burning hot palm, waves of weakness come from my waist. I feel like I'm about to collapse in the next second. This is why Annie said herself. I start to stammer. What did I say? Lincoln scoops me up in a princess hug. While holding me, he lowers his head and kisses my lips. Don't eat. Eat me. The next morning, I wake up with bleary eyes. There is no one on the bed. Lincoln's shirt is draped over the chair. Just like waking up in that Jushin guest house back then. I'm alone. But this time it's different. I take the note on the bedside table. Why, Annie? I've gone to buy you breakfast. You can stay in bed for a while longer. But not for too long. It's not good for your health. Love you. I look at the note. And the corners of my mouth involuntarily turn up. No matter how hard I try, I can't suppress the smile on my face. But I'm still resentful in my heart. This dog man still wants to control me. I'll stay in bed. I'll stay in bed. However, after staying in bed for less than 10 minutes, I can't control myself and walk into the bathroom and start washing up and brushing my teeth obediently. While I'm happily rinsing my mouth, a strange aunt's enthusiastic voice suddenly comes from outside the bathroom door. Lin, how are things going with that girl? Oh, Mom is telling you. You can't be too slow with girls. When it's time to be active, be bold before my brain can react. The bathroom door is pushed open. I declare that it's not me who screamed. A few minutes later, I sit awkwardly on the sofa, next to Lincoln, who has returned from buying breakfast. Opposite us is Lincoln's mother, looking at us with loving eyes. Lincoln speaks first. Mom, why did you come without even saying hello? Lincoln's mother actually starts to apologize first. Sorry, son. This is because I didn't know you had made progress already. Progress? Progress. Okay. I think Auntie must get along well with my mom. A cough. Well, Auntie is not interfering with you two. Just look. After 5 years, you two still can't forget each other. This proves that it must be a match made in heaven. You two get along first. Then one day. Shall we look at a date? Don't worry. After getting married and having a child, if you need help in life, Mom will be there. As for education, you two are in charge. Oh, speaking of this, should we consider buying a school district house early? Child? Doesn't Lincoln's mother know about Ran yet? I ask Lincoln quietly with my eyes. He winks at me and whispers in my ear. I didn't discuss it with you before, so I didn't tell my mom. My heart is filled with warmth. While Lincoln's mother is lost in her ramblings, I quietly hold his hand from behind and also whisper in his ear. I think we can tell Auntie now. Surprise blooms in Lincoln's eyes. We both know that this is a signal. Once we tell our parents, it means that 2 families will be involved. And the next step, I think it's time to give Ran a new home. A home with a mom and dad. August 14th. The 7th day of the 7th lunar month. The appointment on QIXI festival. Suitable for marriage. Great fortune. Lincoln and my wedding is held in that guest house from back then. Ran is attending a wedding for the first time and is having a great time. She runs around everywhere and has long forgotten her identity as a flower girl. Lincoln's mother and my mom follow behind her, worried that she might bump into something, and protect her in various ways. Especially Lincoln's mother. On the first day, when the old lady found out that she had a granddaughter, she fell into an uncontrollable love. She took Ran on various shopping sprees and even planned to move here. After Lincoln and I tried our best to persuade her, the old lady calmed down, but she insists that Ran's summer vacation time belongs to her and no one can take it. Lincoln is afraid that I'll be unhappy and quietly explains to me. I hold his hand and poke his nose. The old lady suddenly found out that she has a grandchild. It's understandable. She always needs some space to release her feelings. Am I so unreasonable? Besides, taking care of a child is not easy. I'm happy to have a vacation. Shall we go on a honeymoon? You decide the place. Lincoln secretly tickled the palm of my hand. The master of ceremonies is probably seeing newcomers whispering during the wedding process for the first time. He coughed loudly twice to signal us to respect the fruits of his labor in hosting. I stuck out my tongue and pushed Lincoln back to his position. At the banquet, Lucy deliberately came to find me for a drink. Unexpectedly. It was to apologize. She said in a tone that was extremely inconsistent with her elegant goddess appearance. Sister-in-law. I really didn't expect that the girl in the library back then was actually you. I thought it was another little schoolgirl. I'm really sorry. I was a bit harsh to you. I'll drink up. You can do as you please. I didn't have time to stop her and watch her gulp down a full glass of white wine. After getting drunk, she completely let loose. She pulled me and continued to gossip. Mainly, your outfit back then was so uncharacteristic of you. Weren't you a cool girl back then? With those big rivets and punk outfits. How did you become so well behaved? I laughed along with, but I really wanted to smash the cake on her face. Can we please not mention this embarrassing scene again? I whispered to Lincoln, who was pulling her back to her seat. So was it because of this that you frowned when you saw me in the library back then? Lincoln left his sister to his bunch of buddies from college and ignored her. He turned around and hugged me. That was obviously not an outfit that you would find comfortable. Why, Annie? I hope that when you are with me, you can still be yourself. Ryan and Drive. Zhang were already flushed from competing in drinking. He walked over holding his glass. I looked at him with disgust. Hey. I warn you. Don't vomit at my wedding. Ryan probably wasn't drunk yet and still knew how to retort me. If I vomit, I won't look for you. I'll look for your Lincoln. Saying that, he drank up the half glass of wine in his hand. This guy was really drunk. After drinking, he actually threw away the glass casually, pulled Lincoln over, and said something in his ear. After Lincoln heard it, he didn't say anything. He patted his shoulder and handed the him to Drive. Zhang. I was curious and chased after Lincoln and asked, "What did that bastard Ryan say to you?" Lincoln just wouldn't tell me and let me pull on his clothes and act wildly. In the end, he couldn't resist my pestering. But he just tapped my lips. It's a secret between men. You don't need to know. All right. The setting sun gradually descended. I leaned on Lincoln's shoulder, squinted my eyes, and looked at the endless sea, the lighthouse at the highest point of the outlying island, and the August monsoon breeze passing through my hand. Familiar scenery. Familiar people. More than 10 years later, we finally stepped into each other's worlds. That wisp of why, and he finally brushed over the distant forest.